Okay. Are they moving at all?
No, dude, they're not moving. Just send somebody out here really quick.
The manner and cause of death has not been determined. The official results of the autopsy and toxicology reports are pending. Both individuals tested negative for carbon monoxide.
Hollywood has seen its fair share of shocking tragedies, but nothing prepared fans for the eerie and unexplained death of Oscar-winning legend Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa.
There are still unanswered questions about the death of two-time Oscar winner Gene Hackman and his wife.
The couple was found lifeless in their Santa Fe home under circumstances that left investigators and the entire industry scrambling for answers.
They found the 95-year-old actor, his wife, and their dog in the couple's Santa Fe, Mexico home on Wednesday.
At first glance, there were no signs of a struggle. No forced entry, no chaos, just an unsettling stillness. Even more chilling, one of their beloved dogs had also been found dead, while two others were still alive, one standing guard as if protecting its fallen owners. But the real mystery wasn't just their deaths. It was what Dustin Hoffman revealed after Hackman's passing. The two actors had shared a friendship spanning over 6 decades, but when Hoffman finally spoke about his best friend's death, his words sent shockwaves through Hollywood. He's not who you think he is. What did he mean? What secrets was Hackman hiding? And why did investigators find something so disturbing inside his home that it changed the entire timeline of events? The truth about Gene Hackman's final days is far more twisted than anyone imagined. And this story starts decades before his tragic end, with an unexpected friendship that Hollywood never saw coming. Section 2, the unbreakable bond between Gene Hackman and Dustin Hoffman. Hollywood friendships are often fragile, built on competition, ego, and ambition. But the bond between Gene Hackman and Dustin Hoffman was different. It wasn't formed in luxury or success, but in the ruthless struggle of trying to make it in an industry that had no room for them. Their paths first crossed in 1956 at the Pasadena Playhouse, an acting school in California. At the time, neither of them looked like typical Hollywood stars. Hoffman was short, unconventional, and self-deprecating, often joking that he looked like a rat on screen. Hackman, on the other hand, was tough, no-nonsense, and determined, having already served in the Marines. At first, they seemed like total opposites, but something about Hoffman's oddball charm caught Hackman's attention. They formed a quiet alliance, navigating the competitive world of acting together. However, their time at Pasadena Playhouse was cut short, especially for Hackman. Unlike his classmates, he refused to conform to the school's rigid grading system, which ranked students on voice, movement, and stage presence. His rebellious streak cost him everything. After just 3 months, he was expelled. But Hackman wasn't one to back down. Instead of quitting, he packed his bags and moved to New York, determined to break into Hollywood on his own terms. And 2 years later, when Hoffman arrived in the city with just $50 to his name, it was Hackman who helped him survive. Desperate for a place to stay, Hoffman crashed on Hackman's kitchen floor, convinced he'd only be there for a few days. Those few days stretched into 3 weeks, until Hackman's wife, Faye, finally had enough. It was time for Hoffman to fend for himself. So Hackman took him out into the city, hunting for apartments until Hoffman eventually found a place, with another struggling actor, Robert Duvall. What followed was a period of survival, struggle, and unexpected brotherhood, as these 3 unknown actors scraped by, taking any job they could find just to afford food. They worked as typists for the Yellow Pages, moved furniture, and even worked as doormen. At one point, Hackman got a job transporting valuable artwork, only to almost destroy a Picasso lithograph with a broomstick, leaving the horrified owner watching in disbelief. Despite the hardship, those were the years that defined them. They spent nights on their rooftop, playing drums and dreaming of stardom, idolizing Marlon Brando, and making promises that one day they'd make it. They had no idea that those dreams were about to come true and that success would change everything. Section 3, Hollywood success and the evolution of their friendship. For years, Gene Hackman, Dustin Hoffman, and Robert Duvall lived in the shadows of Hollywood, taking any role, no matter how small, just to survive. But in 1967, everything changed. Hackman landed a career-defining role in Bonnie and Clyde, playing Buck Barrow, the doomed brother of Warren Beatty's Clyde. The film was a massive success, and suddenly Hackman was no longer just another struggling actor. He was a rising star. At almost the exact same time, Hoffman's life also changed overnight. He was cast as Benjamin Braddock in The Graduate, a role that launched him into instant superstardom. Ironically, Hackman had originally been cast as Mr. Robinson, but the director didn't think he was the right fit and fired him before shooting began. In a matter of months, both actors went from scraping by in a cramped apartment to walking the red carpet and signing major film deals. But with fame came an inevitable shift in their friendship. They were no longer unknown dreamers, spending nights on rooftops, talking about the future. Now they were booked on separate projects, living in different cities, and working with some of the biggest names in Hollywood. Hackman, known for his gritty, intense performances, went on to star in classics like The French Connection and The Conversation. Meanwhile, Hoffman, with his nervous energy and everyman charm, became an acting powerhouse in Midnight Cowboy and Kramer vs. Kramer. Their careers skyrocketed, but their once inseparable bond slowly faded. They rarely had time to see each other, and when they did, the conversations were no longer about scraping by, but about balancing fame, pressure, and the fear of losing everything. Hackman, known for his gritty, intense performances, went on to star in classics like The French Connection and The Conversation. Meanwhile, Hoffman, with his nervous energy and everyman charm, became an acting powerhouse in Midnight Cowboy and Kramer vs. Kramer. Their careers skyrocketed, but their once inseparable bond slowly faded. They rarely had time to see each other, and when they did, the conversations were no longer about scraping by, but about balancing fame, pressure, and the fear of losing everything. Hackman, despite his success, was haunted by an unsettling thought. What if this was the last role I ever got? He once admitted that after every film, he feared he'd never be hired again. It was a sentiment that Hoffman understood all too well, but one thing never changed: their respect for each other. In 2003, after nearly 50 years of friendship, they finally worked together on Runaway Jury. During filming, Hackman opened up about his deep insecurities, revealing that even with 2 Oscars and decades of success, he never truly felt like he had made it. Hoffman listened, knowing exactly what his old friend meant. And then just like that, Hackman disappeared from Hollywood. Without warning, he retired from acting, moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and vanished from the public eye. No more interviews, no more films, just silence. Many believed he had finally found peace after decades in the spotlight. But years later, his sudden and eerie death would send shockwaves through Hollywood. And when Dustin Hoffman finally spoke about it, his words revealed a secret that no one saw coming. Section 4, the chilling discovery in Gene Hackman's home. For years, Gene Hackman had lived a quiet, almost reclusive life in Santa Fe, New Mexico, far from the flashing lights of Hollywood. He rarely made public appearances, barely spoke to the press, and seemed perfectly content with a life away from the spotlight. But on the morning of February 26th, that peaceful existence shattered. A maintenance worker arrived at Hackman's property for a routine check. It was supposed to be just another quiet day in the vast open landscapes of New Mexico. But as he approached the house, something felt off. There was no movement inside, no sound, no response. At first, he thought the couple had stepped out. But after several unanswered knocks, unease began to settle in. Something wasn't right. He called security, and within minutes, a guard arrived to help. They peered through the windows. Everything looked normal. No signs of a break-in, no signs of chaos. But then, the guard stopped, his eyes widening in horror. Inside the home, motionless figures lay on the floor. 911 was called immediately. Within minutes, deputies from the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office arrived, their flashing lights cutting through the eerie stillness of the desert. As they entered the house, what they found inside only deepened the mystery. Hackman's wife, Betsy Arakawa, was discovered in the bathroom, near a small heater. An open medicine bottle lay beside her, but there were no visible signs of struggle, no wounds, nothing to suggest foul play. Nearby, one of their beloved dogs was also dead, curled up as if it had simply drifted off to sleep. But oddly enough, their 2 other dogs were still alive, one of them pacing nervously, the other standing watch over Betsy's body. Then, in a separate room, they found Gene Hackman. His body was undisturbed, lying near a collection of shoes, a cane, and a pair of glasses, as if he had simply collapsed in an instant. No blood, no overturned furniture, no broken glass, no forced entry, nothing out of place. It was as if time had just stopped for them. At first, detectives suspected carbon monoxide poisoning, a silent killer that could have seeped through the home without warning. But when specialists arrived to test the air, they found no traces of a leak. That theory collapsed instantly. And when investigators started piecing together the timeline of events, they discovered something even more unsettling. Hackman's pacemaker held a secret that changed everything. And it was about to expose a disturbing truth about his final days. Section 5, Theories and Investigations. The timeline that doesn't add up. At first, investigators thought the cause of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa's deaths would be obvious. Their bodies were found undisturbed, with no signs of forced entry, no struggle, and no external injuries. The eerie stillness of their Santa Fe home pointed to one likely culprit: carbon monoxide poisoning. The theory made sense. Carbon monoxide is an odorless, invisible gas that can silently overtake a home, leaving victims unconscious before they even realize what's happening. And with one of their beloved dogs also found dead, it seemed like the perfect explanation. But then came the first major twist. Tests found no traces of carbon monoxide in the house. The cause of death wasn't as simple as investigators had hoped, a disturbing discovery in the house. With carbon monoxide ruled out, authorities searched deeper, combing through every room of the home. That's when they made an unsettling discovery. Prescription medications, everywhere. Some were neatly placed in cabinets, others were scattered across the kitchen counter. A few bottles had even been left open, their contents partially emptied. Investigators cataloged every pill bottle they could find. Some contained blood pressure medication, others for thyroid conditions, pain relief, and anxiety. But what stood out was that some prescriptions were barely touched, while others had clearly been used in large amounts. Had the couple accidentally overdosed, or was there something more intentional behind it? The lack of a suicide note and the absence of any recent distress in their lives made it difficult to tell. Friends and neighbors said the couple had always seemed peaceful and content, never showing signs of depression or instability. But then came the revelation that changed everything. The pacemaker data that exposed a chilling truth. Hackman had been living with a pacemaker, a device designed not only to regulate his heart but to record vital data about its activity. Investigators extracted the information, expecting it to provide some clarity on his final moments. Instead, it uncovered something terrifying. The last recorded heartbeat from Gene Hackman was on February 17th, 9 days before his body was discovered. This was the moment when the case shifted from tragic to deeply disturbing. If Hackman had been dead for over a week, what did that mean for Betsy? Had she died at the same time, or had she been alive in the house alone for days, slowly wasting away, unable to call for help? The discovery left investigators with more questions than answers. Why was there no emergency call? Why were some medications left untouched, while others were used extensively? Why did 2 of their dogs survive, while one mysteriously died? And most importantly, what really happened inside that house? Authorities were now looking at a case that no longer made sense. And just when Hollywood thought the mystery couldn't get any stranger, Dustin Hoffman finally broke his silence. But what he said only made things even more confusing. Section 6. Dustin Hoffman breaks his silence. A shocking confession. Hollywood was still reeling from the bizarre circumstances of Gene Hackman's death when Dustin Hoffman finally spoke. For days, he had remained silent, refusing to comment on the loss of his oldest and closest friend. But when he finally addressed the media, his words weren't the comforting tribute people expected. Instead, they sparked even more questions, and possibly hinted at something far darker than anyone had imagined. Hoffman's voice was heavy with emotion, his tone uncharacteristically serious as he said, "It's time to tell everything. He's not who you think he is." The room fell silent. For a man who had known Gene Hackman for over 60 years, this wasn't just a heartfelt farewell. This was a revelation. But what did he mean? The hidden side of Gene Hackman. Hoffman went on to describe a very different Gene Hackman than the world had known. To fans, Hackman was a Hollywood legend, a man of discipline, dedication, and undeniable talent. But according to Hoffman, he was also someone who kept secrets, a man with a restless energy and an obsession with details most people ignored. He was never just an actor, Hoffman continued. He was always watching, learning, piecing things together. But watching what? Learning what? Hoffman wouldn't elaborate. Instead, he shifted to something more personal, describing Hackman's competitive streak, his sharp, sometimes biting sense of humor, and his deep love for classic cars, which he restored with the same precision that he brought to his performances. But his words never directly addressed the mystery surrounding Hackman's death. In fact, it almost felt like he was hinting at something he couldn't say outright. And that was the most unsettling part. What was Hoffman holding back? Was he implying that Hackman had enemies, that his death wasn't as simple as investigators claimed? Or was this just the grief talking, a man struggling to come to terms with losing a friend who had been a constant presence in his life? Whatever the truth was, Hoffman's cryptic words left the world with more questions than answers. And as time passed, with no new developments in the investigation, it seemed like Hollywood would never truly know the full story. But one thing remained clear. Gene Hackman's final days were more mysterious than anyone ever imagined. Section 7. Conclusion. The questions that remain. Even after weeks of investigations, Gene Hackman's death remains an unsettling mystery. No official cause of death has been publicly confirmed. No foul play was found, yet nothing about the case makes sense. The pacemaker data, The scattered medications, the eerily undisturbed home, every clue only seems to raise more questions than answers. And then there's Dustin Hoffman's cryptic statement, he's not who you think he is. Was Hoffman hinting at a hidden side of Hackman that the public never saw? Or was he suggesting something even darker, that Hackman's death wasn't as simple as it appeared? Authorities closed the case with no conclusive explanation. No official cause beyond natural causes was ever given. But Hollywood still isn't convinced. After decades in the public eye, Hackman's final years were spent in complete isolation. Did he know something? Was he running from something? Or was this simply the end of a man who wanted to leave the world on his own terms? No one may ever know the full truth. But one thing is certain, the legend of Gene Hackman didn't end with his final film. It continues to grow, in life, in mystery, and in the unanswered questions that still haunt his legacy. What do you think really happened? Was this just a tragic coincidence, or is there more to the story than we've been told? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into Hollywood's most shocking mysteries, don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction.